What's going on, guys? Today we're talking about the top 5 things I wish somebody would have told me before going to my first regional. Now, pay no attention to what's going on in the background. It's literally just there for just background noise, so it's not just a picture of my just face in the entire screen. This is what it could look like. This is what it does look like, right? So it's here or there. But these are just 5 things that I wish someone would have told me before I went to my first regional, because I did ask the questions. I went to Reddit, I went to YouTube to see like what the right things were to do and to bring for regional. And the advice I got was solid, but it wasn't knock it out of the park type style. So hopefully that's what this will be. Also, if you guys know of any tips you could think of, feel free to leave a comment down below. But it's exciting. Like, a lot of people who joined the game, I was just realizing this yesterday, a lot of people who joined the game over the last 2 years have actually never been to an in-person regional, which is insane. Especially if you were somebody who maybe started playing the game like 3 or 4 years ago, or you just came back into the game 3 or 4 years ago, and you had just gotten to a point to where you were ready to go to a regional in real life, and then boom, COVID and all that, right? So there's a big chance that a large portion of the community has never been to an in-person regional, and it does obviously function differently than in online tournament, right? So here are the 5 tips that I have that I wish I knew before going to my first regional. And if you've been to a regional before and you're watching this video, maybe I'll say something that you hadn't thought of before, right? But we'll just jump in right out with number 1, which is plan the day out. So here's the situation when it comes to regionals. You have to make a decision sometimes the day of, but I would think the day before. Are you going to go to win, get top 8, get your invite, or to lead, or to just have fun, right? So if you're going to win, if you lose more than twice, you have very little chance of winning. Odds are if you lose twice or more, you have no chance of winning. If you're going to get top 8, once again, odds are if you lose 2 or more times, you have no chance. I think I've been to regionals where like someone with 2 losses somehow snuck into the top 8, or sometimes regionals will do top 16. And usually the top 16 will include somebody with 2 losses, but usually not that many. Right, so if you're going to go to regional to win or to get a top 8, odds are once you get that second loss, feel free to leave, because you're not going to get to the win, you're not going to get to the top 8, you're not going to, get all the cool prizes that come with that. Now, if you go to get your invite, this is where it gets a little bit different, a little bit interesting. So, in my experience, regionals with 32 or less invites given, usually you have to have no more than 2 losses. So if you have 3 or more losses and you're trying to get your invite, and that's the only reason you went to the regional is to get your invite, by the time you get your 3rd loss, it's not going to happen. Okay? Now, if you are at a 48 or more, because that's the way it goes from 32 right to 48, you have some leeway. You have some wiggle room there, but it is going to depend on your matchups, right? But I do find it interesting. A lot of times when I go to regionals, you would think that, it's harder to go winless, or to not have any losses at all, loseless, I don't know if that's a word, than it is to go winless. I actually think if you played all 9 rounds of Swiss and you asked everybody what their record was, which that would be annoying, don't do that, but if you did, you'd find more people with 0 losses than 8 losses, because most people don't play until they get 8 losses. Most people are gone by then. And listen, you spend the same amount of money regardless. If you show up, say, hey, I just came here for XYZ reason that we're going to talk about in a little bit, then not like XYZ summon, but like I just came here for another reason other than to actually play in the regional, so this is a free win for you, and then you don't play, it still costs the same amount, right? So there's that to keep in mind as well. You are going to get more duels for your buck if you stay and play all 8 or 9 and sometimes 10 rounds of Swiss, right? But keep that in mind. I did just say sometimes 10 rounds of Swiss. So that means that, think about it, you know, a duel lasts 40 minutes. Even with the new time rules, we're still seeing most rounds last an hour. And especially at a regional, I know the one in Philadelphia had like maybe, I think I had 600 people. We're talking about probably best case scenario, 60 minutes around. And so most regionals start at 10:30, 9 to 10 hours. After 10:30 is about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I'm going to be honest, most regionals I've been to, I will show up there at about 9 to get there early, do some trading, see what's available, maybe pick up some snacks from the locals that's hosting it. And I will then just sit, make sure my deck is ready, do some playtesting hands. Magic players call it fishing. It's a fun fact of the day. And then the rounds will start at 10:30. And then I don't leave till like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And that's just the way it is when it comes to regionals. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just be ready for that, right? Because what's another part of planning the entire day out? Now, I don't know what your eating habits are. I know some people have very unique eating habits. I'm not trying to imply anything by saying this, but in most cases, after 9 hours, you need food, right? So, you know, if you think you can eat a hearty breakfast before going to the regional and eat a big dinner after the regional's over, that's fine. If you only plan on playing until, you know, you go like X2 or you go X3 or have 3 losses or more, that's, you know, and you're planning on eating afterwards, that's fine too. I have been to regionals where they'll have food on site, like actual hot food, like hot dogs or burgers or chips or bananas and stuff like that. Bananas aren't that hot of food, but it is an interesting situation where you can get food there. And like I said, most locals do have like a Snickers bar or Cheetos and stuff like that. So there's that as well. But the last thing you want to be doing is, especially if this is your first regional, be in the middle of your 4th or 5th duel and just be absolutely starving and just be hungry out of your mind, right? That's the last thing you'd want. So just either pack a lunch. I've done that before. I brought 2 Lunchables one time, and I remember one of the judges came walking by and they saw it and they were like, "This guy gets it. This guy knows what he's doing." And I was like, "Yeah, yes, I do." And I was eating the little Lunchable, just something to hold you over. Like, you don't have to have a 3-course meal in the middle of a regional. You will probably won't have time for that, even if you do pack your own lunch, right? But you can still eat and hold yourself together, right? Because if you're like me, I get hangry. And when I'm hangry, I don't duel well, right? So pack a lunch, or bring money for food, or buy snacks beforehand. Just be ready, because this isn't going to be like when you go to locals, usually there's 4 or 5 rounds of Swiss, starts at 6 o'clock, ends at 10 o'clock. Picture that, but just times 2, right? Honestly, maybe even times 3. Because when you go to a locals event, you're thinking about maybe 40 to 50 people go to a locals event. We're talking like usually like 200 to 300 people at a regional, which means you're more likely to have an extended amount of rounds, right? So just plan for that, and have everything prepared for that. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is that you will see the best competition possible. Now, some of you might not know this, actually, because I didn't know this before my first regional. But people play Yu-Gi-Oh! Professionally year-round. Now, most people agree that the only real way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Full-time is to be a streamer or a YouTuber or what have you. But there are people who go to a regional every single weekend. And they go to 2 or 3 different locals throughout the week. And you just got to realize, like, when someone is doing that, they're going to get really, really, really good at the game, right? So not only are you going to see the best players you've probably ever seen, but you'll probably also see the best decks you've probably ever seen. Because I know for me, for example, I've never really gone overly crazy for Yu-Gi-Oh decks. I don't view myself as that bad of a duelist. Like maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm an 8. 7 or 8 for sure. But there are like people who are just as good as me, but they'll spend like $800 to $1,000 on a deck. And the difference between their deck and my Salmon Great deck, right, that's not nearly as expensive as $8,000 to $1,000, is they are playing cards like, it's not just that they're higher rarity cards, but it's also they're playing cards like Forbidden Droplets, which is an insanely powerful card and is a relatively expensive card. Lightning Storm, which is an insanely powerful card and a relatively expensive, right? Like we could keep doing this where, you know, Nibiru is a relatively expensive card. Aptisco Talker is a relatively expensive card. The Adventure Package is an extremely expensive set, right? Of decks, of cards. So just be ready for that. Be ready for players who aren't playing that meta of a deck that I was just talking about. Players like me, for example, who are better than the deck that they're playing, right? Or at least I like to think so, right? So be ready for that type of thing too. As I know you probably go, if you go to locals, right, you'll get a relatively good idea. And that's what I wanted to mention too, like, go to locals before the regional, right? Because even when because no matter how many, you know, tips I have in this video, I'm still going to miss some stuff. Go to locals and ask your people at the locals, like, have you ever been to a regional? Are you going to this regional? Do you have any tips? And they'll tell you. You know, the Yu-Gi-Oh community is relatively nice. Like, they'll tell you, yeah, you can do this and bring this and do this and bring that and different things like that. It also, keep in mind, like, bring your best deck possible. I didn't do that. The first regional that I brought, like, the best deck I thought I could bring was the regional I've actually done the best at, right? No offense to, like, Fire King and Battery Man. I love it. Top 2 favorite archetypes of all time. They're not that good, though, right? So I brought those 2 to my first 2 regionals, and I didn't do that well, right? But then, and this was a long time ago, I brought the Domain Monarchs to my first regional after that, or to the regional after the structure deck had just came out, excuse me. And that was the first regional I went 6-3. Right, so it's a situation where I see a lot of times players will bring like wonky decks. And listen, if you're going just to have fun, you can honestly just skip ahead to the third part, right? You can just skip ahead to tip number 3, because like if you're not really there to, if you're just there to duel and have fun, see what your deck can do, that's fine. I know when MCole40 goes to regionals, he's usually got some sauce. And there are a lot of people who are like that. And the reason I mentioned MCole40, and this is kind of one of the better things about a regional. The reason I mentioned MCole40, or a guy like DZ, for example, or like Jeff Jones, is that they're in my region, right? So you'll end up seeing people who, for lack of a better term, are famous, or at least Yu-Gi-Oh famous, right? Because that, you know, they go to regionals too. You know, Team Sam goes to regionals. Simo goes to regionals. I don't know whatever Yu-Gi-Tuber you like to watch or you are a big fan of, other than me. They go to regionals. I go to regionals, right? There's one, my state is Michigan. There's one in April 24th. I'm probably going to go to that one or the one in May in Columbus, right? So that's just an example, and I'm not, you know, a famous Yu-Gi tuber, right? But there are famous Yu-Gi tubers that go, and there are professional players that go too, which is kind of some of the better things there, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. But just be ready to get your butt whooped. Like, to literally just, like, not draw your best hand, and to have your opponent draw their best hand, and you're playing maybe a tier 2 deck, tier 1.5 deck, and they're playing the best deck of the format. They're playing, like, Brave Adventurer, 60-card shenanigans, whatever that deck is. Or they're playing, like, Eldritch, Still Drain, whatever that deck is. I know Sword Soul's still hanging around up there at the top. Like, they're playing one of the best decks of the format. And you're playing, like, no offense to Ultra Guys. No offense to Salamangreat. You're playing Salamangreat, right? Get ready, because it's not going to be fun sometimes. But you I definitely have seen people, and you'll always see it every single week, some random person, excuse me, topped with like magical musketeers, right? So here's something to keep in mind going forward for your first regional. But the number 3 tip is every card you will need for every deck will be there. Every card you need. And I'm not exaggerating. So a lot of times when I go to my locals, they'll have a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh cards either in little boxes, little binders, or in a case. Sometimes all 3. At regionals, you'll have multiple local series now. And there'll be multiple binders everywhere, and there'll be multiple cases everywhere, and it's going to be absolutely amazing, right? You'll be able to get every single one of your cards from there, if not there. Also keep in mind, people do bring trades. So if you have trades, bring them. If you have a lot of trades, bring them. Even if you think it doesn't matter, even if it's just bulk. This is going to be a good way to get rid of bulk, right? Or, you know, the cards that you get from entering the regional, you can trade those. Right? And the thing is, too, I know a lot of people, and this actually might be me, who go at this stage in my Yu-Gi-Oh career. This is just more, I lean more towards this than anything else. Who go and they don't plan on staying the entire day. They don't plan on playing just for fun, though. They plan on, hey, if I could get a reinvite, if I can get a top, I'm going to do it. The minute I get my 3rd loss, I'm wandering around for trades. And there are a lot of people who do that. A lot of people who do that. So if you're looking for a very specific card, like a specific version of a specific card, you will probably find it at a regional. So bring money. I do have to say, though, do not exchange cash for a card under any circumstance, or you will be kicked out of the regional. That has happened before, okay? So don't do it. Everybody, I will say this too. I'm not blind, okay? I wear glasses. Everybody does it, okay? But just like everybody speeds, that doesn't mean they stop giving out speeding tickets just because everybody speeds, all right? So hopefully that analogy sticks. But every card you're going to need is going to be there. Trading is such a good way to mingle with somebody, to talk with somebody. And who knows, they might have something that you didn't realize that you needed as well, which is super fun. I remember I've gone to regionals with 1 deck and left with like 3 because I've just traded for so many. And if your pulls are good, like you can turn one of the best cards from the most recent set into, or whatever packs you end up getting from regional, into a deck. Not a good one, but like still, you can still turn it into a deck. So that's just something to keep in mind there. The number 4 tip I have is do side events. So I actually participated in a few different side events. So there's a bunch of different ones that they have. I know that they do just like regular tournament where it's like 4 to 8 people. And they run right alongside the regional, but they don't wait for the regional, right? So let's say, excuse me, you're having an 8-person side event. That's 4 duels. Everybody wins 2-0, you know, 4 OTKs, 2-0, etc. They'll just keep moving. They're not going to wait for the regional, right? So that's something you can do as well. I've seen people do that as well. They'll go, you know, they'll lose their first 3 duels, you know, RIP to them. And then they'll just start doing side events the entire day. And you can get, especially the earlier in the day you join side events, you can get some really legitimate testing in side events. And you can win some really cool things. A lot of times they'll have playmats available. They'll have cards available. You'll gain packs. So it's just an opportunity to gain more packs. Obviously, you do have to spend money on them. But in a lot of cases, the packs will pay for themselves. Right? And that's actually what I ended up doing, where I won a playmat for I was playing, it was like the Ancient Gear structure deck. I don't know if you remember that, with like Reactor Dragon and like Ancient Gear, I'm trying to think, Catapult, right? But like that was the one where I got the entire structure deck, and it was a structure deck tournament, and you can only play with the cards in the structure deck, and I ended up winning, and I won a playmat from that, and I got to keep the cards from the structure deck, which was super duper cool, right? So just do side events. What's also cool about side events is that there's some side events that are like a GOAT format. I know Plant Synchro is really starting to gain popularity. I know me myself, I love the 2014 Duelist Alliance format, which actually is on the screen partially on right now with Necron, right? So there's just a lot of fun things you can do with side events, and if you did plan on going there just for fun, you don't have to stay in the regional and just keep getting your butt whooped, right? You can go to a side event and try something unique. Maybe bring your GOAT deck and play there. I will say this too, sometimes in like non-side sanctioned side events, people will just be playing GOAT format. It happens at every regional I've ever been to. People are just playing GOAT format the entire time. Like the 20 to 30 GOAT format people find themselves over the course of the day, and they just start playing GOAT format the entire day. And if that's something you're interested in, you can do that there. And that brings me effortlessly into the number 5 thing, which is mingle. Have fun. Like, if you're like me, maybe you get a little anxious talking to somebody new, or maybe you get, a little scared about those different things like that. You don't have to worry about that, because odds are, I mean, think about it. This is anywhere from 200 to 600 people in the same room who all play Yu-Gi-Oh! Odds are everybody's got social anxiety. Odds are everybody gets a little nervous talking to people. So don't let that be a barrier and hold you down. And if you don't know what to talk about, you do know what to talk about, because you're at a Yu-Gi-Oh! Event. So talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? And there's something to, and as someone who has been at a regional where I've been at the duel that this is happening, I don't find it to be super duper fun when this happens, but I will say it always happens regardless. And it's not fun, but it is kind of fun at the same time frame. And what I'm talking about is that as time progresses onward and more and more people are getting finished with their duels, there will be less and less duels still going on. But no matter what happens every single round, and this happens at locals too, there's one duel that is the last duel. And a lot of times there's an amoeba that just starts forming around the last duels. And it's not because they're trying to like learn or they're trying to pressure anybody. They're just trying to move forward, and they don't have anything else better to do, right? And a lot of times you have to be very careful. If you're going to do that, nothing wrong with that, but just don't backseat duel, right? Don't go like, oh, I wouldn't have played that card there. Don't do that, right? That's actually cheating, and you could get in a lot of trouble, or the players could get in a lot of trouble, right? People always do it like behind closed doors, like, oh, I wouldn't have done that. I would have done something different, right? But don't backseat duel. Just watch and enjoy the duel, and talk about the cards. Talk about, wow, Burden of the Mighty is such a powerful card, or different things like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with doing that if you're going to do it respectfully, right? And you don't have to just talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Too. I remember I was at one event and they were talking about who was the best Hulk, Edward Norton or Mark Ruffalo, which actually is an interesting discussion, but not one for this video, right? But let me know what you guys think. What are the advice or tips that you have for people going to their first regional event, or their first regional event in a while, or what have you? Let me know in those comments down below. Make sure you guys click that like button to show your support for the channel. Subscribe for even more content, but most importantly of all, have a good day.